The turbulent marriage between music icons Whitney Houston and Bobby Brown captivated the world for over a decade. But it was only after Whitney's tragic death that her family, led by her formidable mother Cissy Houston, would finally reveal the painful truth about their relationship. A relationship that many believe contributed to Whitney's downfall. What really happened behind closed doors? Why did the Houston family wait until after Whitney's death to speak out? And what revelations would forever change how we view this storied, troubled union? Stay tuned as we unravel the explosive aftermath of a music legend's passing, when grief, anger, and long-held secrets finally found their voice. Few celebrity couples have captured the public's imagination or sparked as much controversy as Whitney Houston and Bobby Brown. Their 14-year marriage was a tabloid fixture, marked by drug abuse, erratic behavior, and allegations of violence. But it wasn't until Whitney's shocking death in 2012 that her family, particularly her mother Cissy, would break years of silence to share what they witnessed during those tumultuous years. Before we dive into the revelations that stunned fans worldwide, let's rewind to understand how this unlikely romance began. Born in Newark, New Jersey in 1963, Whitney Elizabeth Houston came from music royalty. Her mother, Cissy Houston, was a renowned gospel singer who performed with artists like Elvis Presley and Aretha Franklin. Whitney's cousins included Dionne and Dee Dee Warwick, and her godmother was gospel legend CeCe Winans. From an early age, Whitney was immersed in music, joining the choir at New Hope Baptist Church at just 5 years old. Growing up in a household filled with musical talents shaped Whitney's extraordinary vocal abilities. Her mother Cissy became her vocal coach, meticulously training her throughout her teenage years. Despite facing racism and colorism during her childhood, Whitney's natural beauty and talent led her to modeling at age 16, becoming one of the first Black women to grace the cover of 17 magazine. Meanwhile, Bobby Brown was born in Boston, Massachusetts, in 1969, one of 8 children in a working-class family. His childhood was marred by trauma. He later revealed he was molested by a priest while in temporary custody of social services, an experience he said contributed to his struggles with substance abuse. By age 14, he had formed the R&B group New Edition with childhood friends, launching him into fame with hits like Candy Girl. The paths of these two vastly different artists seemed unlikely to cross. Whitney was being groomed as America's sweetheart with a pristine image, while Bobby cultivated a bad boy persona. Yet fate had other plans for them. By the time Whitney released her self-titled debut album in 1985, she was already a sensation, with Clive Davis of Arista Records guiding her career. Her powerful voice and crossover appeal made her an instant star. Meanwhile, Bobby left New Edition in 1985 to pursue a solo career, finding success with his second album Don't Be Cruel in 1988, cementing his reputation as the king of New Jack Swing. These two forces of nature, one portrayed as angelic, the other as rebellious, were on a collision course that would forever alter both their destinies. When Whitney Houston and Bobby Brown locked eyes at the Soul Train Music Awards in 1989, something electric happened. As Whitney would later recall to Rolling Stone, "We were laughing, and I kept hitting Bobby in the back of the head. I leaned over and said, 'Bobby, I'm so sorry.' And he turned around and looked at me, like, 'Yeah, well, just don't let it happen again.'" That brief exchange sparked her curiosity about the bad boy of R&B, who seemed unimpressed by her star power. Their courtship began against the backdrop of Whitney's skyrocketing career. By this time, she had released her second album, Whitney, making history as the first female artist to enter the Billboard charts at number 1. Her pristine image, carefully crafted by mentor Clive Davis, had made her America's sweetheart, a marketable crossover artist who appealed to both Black and white audiences. Bobby pursued Whitney with persistence, eventually asking her on their first date in 1989. "We went shopping in Beverly Hills, and then we had dinner at the Ivy, and then we just chilled for the rest of the evening, Bobby later recalled. Despite their apparent differences, she was gospel-trained royalty, he was a streetwise performer. There was an undeniable attraction between them. Their romance blossomed during a pivotal time in Whitney's career. In 1992, she starred in The Bodyguard opposite Kevin Costner, a film that would catapult her to even greater heights with its record-breaking soundtrack. That same year, after a 3-year courtship, Whitney and Bobby married in an extravagant ceremony at her New Jersey estate on July 18, 1992. Industry insiders were baffled by the pairing. Whitney's handlers reportedly worried that Bobby's rough-edged reputation would tarnish her carefully cultivated image. But those close to Whitney suggested she was drawn to his authenticity, a quality she may have felt was missing in her own manufactured public persona. The newlyweds welcomed their only child, Bobby Christina Brown, in March 1993, seemingly cementing their fairy tale romance. But behind the scenes, cracks were already forming in the foundation of their relationship. And Whitney's family, particularly her protective mother Sissy, watched with growing concern as the golden girl of pop became entangled with a man they believed was wrong for her from the start. But no one could have predicted just how turbulent the waters would become. As one insider would later reveal, the day Whitney married Bobby Brown was the beginning of the end. A prophetic statement that, in retrospect, carries the weight of tragedy to come. The early years of Whitney and Bobby's marriage coincided with her greatest commercial success. The Bodyguard soundtrack, featuring the iconic cover of Dolly Parton's I Will Always Love You, became the best-selling soundtrack of all time. But as Whitney's star continued to rise, rumors of trouble in paradise began to circulate. By the mid-1990s, Whitney's pristine image was beginning to crumble. The couple's public appearances became increasingly erratic. They showed up late to interviews, sometimes appeared disoriented, and their behavior grew increasingly unpredictable. Whispers of drug use that had once been confined to industry insiders began making their way to tabloid headlines. According to sources close to the Houston family, Sissy Houston watched in horror as her daughter's life spiraled out of control. Reports suggest that Sissy and other family members staged an intervention in July 1999, desperately trying to persuade Whitney to seek treatment for substance abuse. But their efforts proved unsuccessful. The couple's drug problems were allegedly exacerbated by their enabling relationship. In a 2009 interview with Oprah Winfrey, Whitney would later admit that she and Bobby used drugs together, revealing that he had laced marijuana with cocaine during their marriage. Meanwhile, Whitney's once powerful voice, the instrument that had made her a legend, began to deteriorate noticeably. But substance abuse wasn't the only issue plaguing the marriage. In December 2003, Bobby was charged with battery following an altercation during which he allegedly threatened Whitney and physically assaulted her. Police reported that Whitney had visible injuries to her face. Though Whitney stood by her husband publicly, her family was reportedly devastated. Perhaps the most disturbing incident came in 2005 when Sissy Houston paid a surprise visit to the couple's Atlanta home. According to later accounts from Sissy's 2013 memoir, Remembering Whitney, she was horrified to find walls spray-painted with big glaring eyes and strange faces. Even more disturbing, Whitney's face had been cut out from a framed family picture. The scene was so alarming that Sissy's next visit included 2 sheriff's deputies who helped take Whitney to the hospital. 2 competing narratives emerged to explain the couple's troubles. Hypothesis A suggested that Bobby was the corrupting influence, introducing Whitney to a harder lifestyle and drugs, taking advantage of her fame and fortune while his own career floundered. Those subscribing to this theory pointed to Whitney's relatively stable behavior before meeting Bobby and her rapid decline afterward. Hypothesis B, however, painted a more complex picture. Some insiders claimed Whitney had been using drugs long before meeting Bobby, possibly as early as her teenage years. This perspective suggested that rather than Bobby corrupting Whitney, they were 2 troubled souls who enabled each other's worst tendencies. Whitney's brother Michael would later confess to Oprah that he had actually introduced Whitney to cocaine in the 1980s before she met Bobby. By 2004, the couple's struggles became public entertainment with the reality show Being Bobby Brown on Bravo. The series shocked viewers by revealing a Whitney far removed from her polished image, crude, combative, and clearly troubled. Critics noted that the show seemed to capture a marriage in its death throes. After years of public spectacle, Whitney finally filed for legal separation in September 2006, following by divorce proceedings the next month. The divorce was finalized in April 2007, with Whitney receiving custody of their daughter, Bobby Christina, then 14 years old. But the end of their marriage would not be the end of their story, or its consequences. For years after their divorce, both Whitney and Bobby maintained a relatively dignified silence about the details of their marriage. Whitney focused on her comeback, releasing her final studio album I Look to You in 2009, while Bobby continued to struggle with his own demons. But after Whitney's shocking death on February 11, 2012, found drowned in a hotel bathtub with heart disease and cocaine as contributing factors, the floodgates of revelation burst open. In 2013, just a year after Whitney's passing, Whitney Houston published her memoir, Remembering Whitney: My Story of Love, Loss, and the Night the Music Stopped. The book represented the first major break in the Houston family's silence about Whitney's troubled marriage. With Whitney no longer able to protect Bobby or their privacy, Sissy finally spoke her unfiltered truth. I do believe her life would have turned out differently. Sissy wrote about Whitney's relationship with Brown. It would have been easier for her to get sober and stay sober. Instead, she was with someone who, like her, wanted to party. Sissy revealed she had never believed Bobby was right for her daughter, bluntly asking one interviewer, "How would you like it if he had anything to do with your daughter?" The memoir painted Bobby as childish, impulsive, and jealous of Whitney's success. Sissy recounted the horrifying 2005 incident at the couple's Atlanta home with the spray-painted walls and Whitney's cut-out face from family photos. She described her relief when Whitney finally left Bobby in 2007, writing that she was extremely relieved and thanking God so much I'm sure nobody else could get a prayer into him. But perhaps most damning was Sissy's assessment of Bobby's role in Whitney's life. My problem with Bobby has always been that he became her husband, but not her helpmate or protector. This sentiment crystallized the Houston family's view that Bobby had failed in his most fundamental duty, to care for and protect the woman he had married. The revelations didn't stop with Sissy. In 2016, Bobby published his own memoir, Every Little Step, which included bombshell allegations about Whitney, including claims that she had used drugs with their teenage daughter and had an affair with Tupac Shakur. The book sparked immediate backlash from the Houston family. Sissy Houston publicly condemned the book and Bobby's promotional interview on 2020, stating, "I am deeply disappointed that this interview to promote the story of Bobby's life seemed to be more of an exposé on Whitney's life." The war of words made clear that the animosity between Bobby and Whitney's family had not diminished with her passing. The competing narratives, Bobby's claims versus the Houston family's counterclaims, created a public spectacle that many felt dishonored Whitney's memory. But they also provided a window into the complex, troubled relationship that had ended so tragically. In the years following these revelations, the ripple effects continued to spread through both families. Perhaps most tragically, Whitney and Bobby's daughter, Bobby Christina Brown, seemed caught in the crossfire of lingering resentments and unresolved grief. On January 31, 2015, in an eerie parallel to her mother's death, Bobby Christina was found unconscious in a bathtub at her home. After spending nearly 6 months in a coma, she died on July 26, 2015, at the age of just 22. The medical examiner determined the cause of death as lobar pneumonia. resulting from immersion in water and drug intoxication. During Bobby Christina's hospitalization, tensions between the Brown and Houston families erupted once again. Reports suggested disagreements over her medical care and visitation rights. Bobby Brown claimed in interviews that if Bobby Christina had been better protected by the Houston family after Whitney's death, she might still be alive, an accusation that further inflamed relations. The music industry's response to these family revelations was mixed. Some colleagues defended Bobby, suggesting he had been unfairly scapegoated for Whitney's addiction issues that predated their relationship. Others sided with the Houston family, pointing to Bobby's multiple arrests and documented incidents of domestic disturbance during the marriage. Whitney's longtime friend and former assistant Robin Crawford added another layer to the narrative in 2019 with her memoir, A Song for You, My Life with Whitney Houston. Crawford confirmed long-standing rumors that she and Whitney had been romantically involved in their youth. She suggested that Whitney ended their physical relationship due to societal pressure and her career ambitions, and eventually married Bobby in part to quash speculation about her sexuality. Crawford's account painted Bobby as a jealous presence who resented her close bond with Whitney. Whitney told me her mother said it wasn't natural for two women to be that close, Crawford wrote, adding another dimension to the complex family dynamics at play. Bobby himself told US Weekly in 2016 that he believed if Robin was accepted into Whitney's life by others, Whitney would still be alive today. A rare point of agreement between Bobby and Crawford. In the aftermath of these competing narratives, documentaries and biopics attempted to make sense of Whitney and Bobby's complicated story. The 2018 documentary Whitney, directed by Kevin MacDonald, featured interviews with family members and addressed many of the allegations that had surfaced. Lifetime's TV movie Whitney, directed by Angela Bassett in 2015, dramatized their relationship, though it was criticized by both the Houston estate and Bobby Brown. The public feuding between the families continued to eclipse Whitney's musical legacy at times, shifting focus from her extraordinary talent to the tragedy of her personal life. Industry colleagues lamented this focus on scandal rather than artistry, with many calling for a return to celebrating Whitney's unparalleled contributions to music. Today, more than a decade after Whitney's death, the relationship between the Brown and Houston families remains strained, though public confrontations have largely subsided. Bobby Brown has rebuilt his life, marrying manager Alicia Etheridge in 2012, with whom he has 3 children. He continues to perform with New Edition and as a solo artist, while also speaking openly about his sobriety journey. The Houston family, led by Whitney's sister-in-law Pat Houston, has focused on preserving Whitney's musical legacy. In 2018, they collaborated on the documentary Whitney, seeking to reclaim her narrative from tabloid headlines and present a more nuanced portrait of the troubled star. Tragically, both families have endured further losses. Bobby's son, Bobby Brown Jr., died in November 2020 at age 28 from an accidental overdose. And in October 2024, Cissy Houston passed away at age 91 while under hospice care for Alzheimer's disease. Despite their contentious history, Bobby released a respectful statement upon Cissy's death, saying, "Sending love and blessings to the Houston family on this great loss. May she rest in peace and power." Whitney's estate continues to manage her musical catalog, which remains enormously popular and influential. Her songs still dominate radio airplay, and new generations discover her remarkable talent through streaming services. In 2020, Whitney was posthumously inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, a testament to her enduring cultural significance. Perhaps the most poignant legacy of the Houston Brown saga is its cautionary tale about fame, addiction, and the toll of public scrutiny. The revelations that emerged after Whitney's death painted a picture of a woman trapped between competing identities: the pristine pop princess, created by the music industry, versus the troubled soul struggling with personal demons. Music historians now generally view the Houston family's post-death revelations as an attempt to reclaim Whitney's narrative and legacy. By speaking out about Bobby's alleged negative influence, they sought to separate Whitney's brilliance from the troubles that plagued her later years. Bobby's counter-narratives, meanwhile, seemed designed to defend himself against being cast as the villain in Whitney's story. What remains undisputed is Whitney Houston's extraordinary gift, a voice that defined a generation and set standards few could match. As time passes, perhaps that voice, rather than the controversies surrounding her personal life, will once again take center stage in how we remember this remarkable artist. The story of Whitney Houston and Bobby Brown reminds us that behind the glamour of celebrity often lies complicated, messy humanity. When Whitney's family finally broke their silence after her death, they revealed not just their perspective on a troubled marriage, but also their own grief, regret, and desire to protect the legacy of a beloved daughter and sister. The truth, as always, likely lies somewhere between the competing narratives offered by the Browns and the Houstons. What's certain is that Whitney's voice, that incomparable instrument that could soar to impossible heights, was silenced too soon, leaving us to wonder what might have been. If you found this exploration of Whitney and Bobby's complex relationship revealing, please like and subscribe for more deep dives into the stories behind the music that defined our culture. And share your thoughts in the comments below. What aspects of Whitney's legacy deserve more attention?